आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Now let's chant the dhyana shloka, which we will do from now on, and perhaps next week I will briefly explain the meaning of it, but for now just the dhyana shloka. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tatgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na Vidussura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So this is our second class. So in the just a update on the books, and I think you received the WhatsApp message that indicated that at least thanks very much to Nanjunda, we were able to find a digital copy of this Bhagavad Gita with Swami Shankarananda's commentary, and so you have that with you. As far as the physical copies are concerned, 9 of you have already been given those books by now. I think they will be in your hand very shortly. 10 more are still stuck. I've been following up, and I understand what's happening is that they are in some kind of a postal depot in Atlanta, and in this depot, when they have a problem with the consignment of some kind, most probably, as this lady was telling me, it does not have the address properly, so they don't know who to send it to. So they have to get the sender to write out a detailed review of what the contents are and who they should be go to. So if that happens, then we will get 10 more, hopefully in the next month or so, I would guess. In which case, really almost everybody that had requested it will get a hard copy. But in the meantime, you have the digital copy to work with. Then I think the question is, how are we going to, because this is a huge amount of text that will take us a long time to cover if we do it continuously. So I've had some thoughts about it, and I think today itself we will see how that goes. And the thoughts that I have are that again, I don't intend to go through word by word, verse by verse, but to capture the essential conceptual ideas of Swami Shankarananda. And those consist of, I think it's a very beautiful thing to see, as I indicated to you, that from now on our focus, our drishti will be towards aparoksha jnanam, not paroksha jnanam, not shravanam as much as mananam. And so what that means is that we need to narrow the gap between what is being said and what is being absorbed by us. We need to narrow that gap. And I think one way to narrow that gap is to relate to this conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Relate to it in a manner where you can say, yes, those are my doubts too. If you just look at this dialogue between the teacher and the student at a distance, kind of like, you have your arms folded, you're going into some kind of a show, and you're watching some couple of people talking to each other and so on, and saying, oh, this is interesting, wonderful, and all that. More than that, if you relate to the questions and doubts and the clarifications of those questions and doubts by what's called an apta purusha. Apta purusha means one who knows exactly what the answers are. This is Ishvara himself, as we saw in the Dhyana shloka. Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam. A remarkable book where Ishvara himself comes and teaches. So that relation, to be able to relate to both the questions and the answers in a very intimate manner, provides us with a depth of understanding which would be missing if you just fold your hands and kind of look at the two people talking to each other. This is what the whole objective are. So here, Swami Shankarananda has done a marvelous job of making that happen. He gets into the minds of both the people and saying this is why he is asking. The main thing that he is really providing us is why. Why is this question? And what is the answer for that? And how the question and answer are connected. How the flow is. So there, what I intend to do is to point that out from time to time. In fact, focus on it primarily. And when that happens, then, as I have mentioned to you, that this is also a class which is meant to provide people that know some Sanskrit to be able to read the vakyas, the very sentences, and understand the Sanskrit of that, at least get the facility of reading it. And so for these important connections and insights, as much as possible, I will go to the Sanskrit first. And I would even suggest that those of you that know Hindi, you may want to look at the very accurate sentence by sentence, word by word translation by Bhole Baba. And so you can at least appreciate that. So this is the process we're going to follow, and I think I'm just giving you a kind of a theoretical picture of this, but from today's class itself you will see how we are going to proceed. Time will tell. This is an immense task, and I don't know how long it would take, and I might change the tactics as we go along, but that is the background on how we would be doing. Okay, so just wanted to talk about that. So very briefly, as we will do from almost every time, is the last week's review. So in the last week's review, the first chapter was Arjuna Vishada Yoga, that he is a very troubled person. and he turns to Ishvara, turns to Krishna. So Krishna here is Ishvara. So you should see that's the thing we should say. You should turn to God and say, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a happy person, and I need your help. So this is the background of the first chapter. Very much like, we have our lives where we feel, oh, I think I can figure this out. I think there are problems and I will be able to solve them, and so on. And then finally comes to a point where, especially if you have a major problem in your life, there you cannot really resort to your own help. You cannot resort to the help of your immediate family or friends. And so therefore something happens where you close your eyes and says, can somebody please help me? And normally you would think of God. Well, God which is unexplored, has not really been understood, but nevertheless you turn to some kind of a force called God, Ishvara, and say, can you please help me? And so that is a situation that Arjuna finds himself. So that being the case, this is a very opportune moment for someone who has kind of like given up and asks for help to be given some help. And so asking for help is an important thing. So this is exactly what the first verse of Brahma Sutra is. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Ataha Brahma Jnatum Ichcha, as we saw. And so here, this is exactly what the first verse of the second chapter is given. And we went over that pretty much. And here I can point out an important connection and an important summary. So this is what we have to do. As I was saying earlier, that I may not be able to do all the sentences, but for sure we should be very focused on summaries and connections and conceptual ideas. So here's an example of that. So if you turn to the of page 30 of this book and you look at the summary of this first verse. So first in Sanskrit and then I will explain it. So the very last line of the paragraph of Sanskrit which says Mumukshohu Gurum Upasidati. Mumukshoho Gurum Upasishidatoho Eva Etaihi Uktagunaihi Bhavitavyam iti anena Gyapitam Bhavati. One more time, not very clear. Mumukshoho Guru Upasishidi. This is I'm not sure about it. Dishoho etaihi uktagunaihi bhavitavyam iti anena jnapitam bhavati. So the Hindi translation of that is, इससे ये सूचित होता है कि गुरु के पास जाने वाले मुमुक्षु को इन कहे हुए गुणों से संपन्न होना चाहिए. So it says in English now, the translation is, the first verse indicates that to ask for help from a guru one should be endowed with these qualities. You don't have to have the qualities to approach the Guru, but the help of the Guru will not be beneficial to you. You will not be listening really, the depth of the understanding will not be there. And so there in the last class we had talked about, see, the first is the daya. So the daya was the main tam daya kripaya avishtam shushupurna kulekshanam vishidantam idam vakyam uvacha madhusudana. So daya. So daya means that not just one. Swami Shankarananda says it's not just one thing. All of them, all 8 of them, and there we didn't do the anayasa. As Srida was asking, what is the meant by anayasa? So anayasa is a kind of a difficult word. It's had lots of different meanings. And so what it means is that without a lot of tension, without a lot of worry, just relaxed manner. Anyway, all the 8 of them is, we've already done that. Daya, Shanti, Anusuya, Shuchi, Anayasa, Mangalya, Akarpanya, Aspriha. These are the 8 Atma Gunaha. So these were given in the first one. So this is all from last week. Now let us go forward. So here Sri Krishna starts asking making a comment and asking some questions from Arjuna in 2 verses. So starts with Kutaha. Kutaha means from where? Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samupasthitam anarya jushtam asvargyam akirtikaram Arjuna klaibyam masma gamaha partha nainam tatyamupadyate kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktva uttishta parantapa. So the meaning of the verses number 2 and 3, they are all connected, both verses, is from where did this strange behavior on your part come from? Where did it come from? I don't understand this. You're not expected to have this kind of a behavior. And so you look like a weakling. So this is a very unusual behavior on your part because you have been training to become a soldier and a leader of soldiers. And just think about it. If you are training to become a soldier and not only that, but a leader, a teacher of soldiery, what is the kind of discipline, what kind of a character will you have? With a lot of discipline, a lot of work. You will probably work out every day, make sure that your muscles are strong, and you will not really be easily swayed, and you will not be afraid of things, and you will really lead into the war, because to become a soldier is not an easy thing. You have to face death, and it doesn't really faze you. You're so strong-willed. That is the nature of you, and you've been training to do that. In the middle of that, you are acting very strangely, because you're trembling, and as though you have no power whatsoever. And how did that happen? If you were in the type of a person who was always afraid and so on, then I could understand, but that's not the case. In the middle of the war, when everybody is expecting you to provide the kind of leadership that you have been known for, to now say I can't do it, how is that possible? Kutaha. So he says, kind of sometimes you have these conscientious objectors who say that I will not. I remember when I first came to this country and there was the Vietnam War going on. I was a student at Berkeley, and there were so many people who were conscientious objectors that we do not believe in war, we are all for love and so on. But they already had that character in their own thinking. So that I can understand. But here, if you are a soldier who is going ready for war, all of a sudden to feel very weak is something that I don't understand. How has that come? Where did it come from? So here, just a second. So here in the Sanskritam, he says in the third line, Kala doshat karma doshat va kasmat ayam brahmaha shuddha swabhavasya vivekinaha tava praptaha ityarthaha. So he says that either you are a viveki in the sense that you know what is good, what is bad, and all of a sudden, either through some past karma or some prarabdha kala eva, something has happened to you where you are displaying this unusual behavior on your part. How? This is the question that he have. So here, now look at this dialogue. Arjuna tries to explain, because this is the question by Sri Krishna, where did this come from? So Arjuna says, it's not my defect. It's not my defect. Why is it not my defect? Because, so anyway, this is the verses number 2 and 3. Verses number 2 and 3 is the asking by Arjuna, by Krishna, where did this weakness arise from? I don't understand this. So in verse number 4, Arjuna tries to justify. So he says, Guruna hatva hi mahanubhavaha Shreyo bhoktum bhaiksham apiha loke hatva artha kamamstu guru nihaiva bhunjiya bhogan rudirat pradagdan. And this is number 5, sorry. I'm skipping one. Arjuna uvacha Katham bhishma maham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana ishubhihi pratiyotsyami pujar hava arisudana. So here Arjuna provides a justification for this unusual behavior. He says, it is not my defect. Look what I am faced with. Just think about it. He's telling this to Sri Krishna. He says that in this war, I am faced with trying to kill the very people that I have been worshipping all my life. And he explains this in some manner. He says, listen, these Mahanubhavaha, these are great people who have taught me everything that I know. They are my gurus. They are the ones who really brought me up to what I am. So it's not a defect on my part that I am becoming weak. Look what I am faced with. Because if you have a very leave aside a guru, a kind of like an elderly person in the home, then you do namaskara to them and forget about trying to harm them. You cannot even say anything bad about them. Here, it's very interesting. Swami Maheshananji had pointed out that, he was, the context here is that, he says that there are three kinds of debts that you should pay back, right? So Rishi Rinam, Deva Rinam, and then your own elders Rinam, because your own mother and father are important people in your life, because through them Ishvara has launched you. So they are very important people. So you have to pay off the Rinam. And most people feel that I will pay off the Rinam after they are gone. Then I will do some kind of a once a year ceremony and do namaskara and give some money and so on. Swami Maheshananji says, what about when they are alive? What's your behavior towards them? Are you becoming impatient with them? Your mother really does something, she says something to you and her behavior is not right. Do you challenge her? Do you try to put her down in any way? Or you accept it? Now, Maheshananji says that sometimes even saying, if your father, it usually happens when the son or the daughter, it really happens with sons. The daughters are much more soft and tolerant. But the sons, this is what happened to the male people. They think, now I've grown up, I can be on my own and so on. And your father might say, so this is a dialogue mostly between father and son, although it can happen with mothers and daughters also. And the father will say, you should not be doing this. This is not a good thing to do. I am just making it up, something like this. So Swami Maheshananji says that suppose you say the son to whom the father is now saying you should not be doing this, says, He says this is Mahapapa. Even to say, that means no, don't accept what you're telling me. Not a good behavior. In fact, it is already past the point where you somehow things did not go well between you and your parents, where you rejected their advice. And it doesn't matter that you don't like their advice, but to have this kind of a sudden behavior which says, home means that you're not knocking them out physically, but verbally you're knocking them out. So here's Arjuna is justifying, he says, these are my gurus, my elderlies of the home, and I used to bring them flowers and everything. And I've never even said hum to them. Even if they said, hey, why are you late today and so on, I cannot say, I can be late if I want to. No, I could never even think about doing that. And leave aside giving them a threat towards the life. He says, do you know what I'm faced with? This is what is causing me to pause and saying, what am I doing? What has brought me up to this point? And then he says the following. It's interesting. This is good. So he says, so just the Sanskrit for what I just explained to you is given on page 32. He says, Hey Arisudana, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth line of this verse. Hey Arisudana, Bhishma Dronau Grihe Pitravat Pushpadibihi Puja Arhao Natu Vacha Api Yuddharhi Kimuta Vanaihi Mama Dharma Mama Ghati Bhihi Na Yuddha Arhao Iti Sharaihi Tayoho Mama Chedam Katham Karishyami. So let's look at this. So the Sanskrit says that Bhishma and Drona, both of his teachers, Drona was the one who taught him archery, and Bhishma was the one who is the grandfather of all of them. He says, Pitravat Pushadibihi Puja Arhau. They are like my father. They are not my father, but they are like my father. Natu vacha bihi yuddharthau. He says, I cannot even say anything to them. There's hum that we talked about. Kimuta banaihi. What to say? So this kimuta is a very interesting construction in Sanskritam. Kimuta means what to speak of. That is too much for even to do. That through my arrows I harm them. So mama chedam katham karishyami. How am I going to do that? Okay. One more thing. I mean, I have to make sure that it's not. I have to take a pause because I made some comments about that. I want to make sure that I Kim Tao. Yeah, it's interesting. One other thing. And Arjuna says, and by the way, if you think that I am afraid of them, that's not the case. So it is given in the second line. Kim tau sharyadhikau iti bhitva tabhyam yodhum na shaknosi iti aha puja. He says, if you think I am not fighting with them because they are the ones who taught me the archery, and therefore it is reasonable that they will be stronger than me, and therefore I am afraid of them, that's not the case. So look at the going behind the scenes and understanding how they are behaving with each other. He says that's not the case. It is just the other one that I mentioned to you, that I am cognizant of their greatness, and I don't want to really go through with this. Then number 5. So that's the one that I read earlier. Guru nahatvahi mahanubhavaha shreyo bhoktum bhaiksham apiha loke hatvartha kamanstu gurun nihaiva bhunjiya bhogan rudirat pradagdan. So he says, so here there is a connection. There is a connection here. So look at this connection. So he says, Kshatriyanam yuddham shreyaskaram katham tvaktum na shakyate ityaha guruniti. Means that if this is a war with some very deserving people, kalyana guna, not deserving, but one who have a lot of gunas, lot of qualities, how can I desist from fighting with them? If this is your question, let me tell you the answer. So now this is Arjuna talking. Arjuna says, listen, don't say that there is no alternative, because there is. And here is what it is. So then he explains. He says, the alternative is that I give up my desire to kill them. And if it means that I just have to live like a simple person who just lives by begging for food, so be it. It is better to be a beggar than to be a killer. This is what Krishna is saying. He says, Bhaiksham apiha loke bhoktum. Rather than being involved with the bloody war, Rudira Pradigdhan. Rudira Pradigdhan means the one who has bloodied himself and others, is washing his wounds and his swords and so on and so forth. No, I would rather just be a beggar and avoid all of this kind of a thing. Then, in verse number 6, he proceeds further. He says, okay, I understand. If you think now, Krishna says that, listen, Ishvara has made everybody for a particular purpose. So, these 4 classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, etc., it is meant for a purpose. The qualities take a while to display. Some of the acharyas say that sometimes if you have multiple kids in your family, not just 1 or 2, but supposing you have in the old days, people used to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children and so on. You see all the children having different personalities. Somebody would be very studious. Somebody would become desirous of joining the army. This is what, not in one family, but this is what happened to me when we were in high school in Amritsar. There's like 5 or 6 of us that used to hang together. We were close friends. And used to talk about it. What do you want to be? How should we do this? And there's a couple of us that just wanted to to just study and be either engineers, scientists, or doctors or whatever. I could not be a doctor because my health was not very good, and how could I be cutting all these frogs and so on. So my parents said, you don't have to be a doctor, just be an engineer. And that also electronic engineer, where you don't have to go outside and cut wood and all that, you just look inside. And there's another friend of mine who became a very famous scientist. And so he was number one in the class, and I was always not quite as good as him, but fairly good. And then there were a couple of people whose job it is to, whose desire it was to join the army. And they did. One of them lost a leg in a war with Pakistan, Vijay Oberoi. And he became a lieutenant general. Another one became not quite as high, but he was also very good in the army. And there were some other people who said, I don't know, I just want to be making some money and so on and so forth. So there are different kinds of people. So Arjuna here says that if you think that I am a Kshatriya whose job it is to fight and be a part of the army, if you think that is the case, he says, just 1 second, let me see the exact Sanskritam. I think I need to underline it so I can find it better next time. I'm sorry for all these interruptions. Yeah. So this is on page 33, right after the end of verse number 5, as the introduction to verse number 6. It says, Ye yudhyante pradhaneshu shurasaha ye tanu tyajyaha iti shravanad kshatriyanam yuddhameva shreyaskaram natu bhikshashanam ityaha nacha etaditi. He says that if the scriptures say that for a Kshatriya the most important thing is to fight as the occasions come, not to give up. If you think this is what I should be doing, then my answer is, I am not sure about this. This is where I have a doubt. And please remove the doubt. I have come to you for that. Should I just behave as a soldier? Means that there is a certain, the same thing applies in our own lives. Arjuna is an example of us, really. This is how we have to look at it. That we also face the same thing. There is a certain station in our life that I'm supposed to do. Their children, their wife, spouses, etc., etc. And then there is also the pull of the scriptures will say, you better study. Well, how am I going to study? I have to really be part of the family. So this is exactly like that. He's supposed to be fighting. And he says that then my mind tells me, and in fact there are other scriptures who say that really you should just not be killing and so on, just give it up. So he says, I am confused now. I don't know which one to do, and this is where I am approaching you. And he says, now here's what I have my doubt. Here's my doubt. My doubt is that people say that by winning the war, you will bring a relief and happiness to everyone, including yourself, because these are wrongdoings by the Kauravas, and so therefore you are supposed to fight them on and conquer them. And as part of this whole thing, this is what the argument is. This is what Arjuna is saying. Arjuna is saying that the argument is that by winning the war, I will be, not only I, but all the rest of the people that I'm protecting will all be happy. But he says, you know what? I have a doubt about it. What is the doubt? I look at myself after winning the war. Supposing I close my eyes and say, okay, well, that was a good job we did. We really defeated the enemy. What we set out to do, and we were able to accomplish it. Therefore, I should feel very happy about it. But I have a doubt that will I feel happy about it. In fact, I don't think I will be. Why? Because I will have regrets that, my goodness, these are the people who helped me all my life and I had to kill them. How can I be happy about it? It's not clear to me. So the advice given by the Shruti that a Kshatriya must fight because that is the right thing for me to do may not apply to me because I would have a lot of regrets about it. This is what he is saying. So then he says, out of these, which one is better, I don't know. So in summary, whether I should fight or I should just lay down my arms and just be a simple person, avoiding the bloodshed, out of these two courses of action, it is not clear to me what I should be doing. So this is given in this first line of the verse number 6 on page 33. Bhiksha shanam ayudhyam. There's something missing here. Yeah, so sometimes these the print here is missing bhiksha. Oh, yuddhayoho. So it's yoho. That's why it is this instead of, where's my pencil? So he says bhiksha ashana yuddhayoho madhye naha asmakam dharma paranam gariyah shreshtam katarat kintuva. The meaning of that is that out of these two alternatives, one is just living on bhiksha. Bhiksha meaning that whatever I do, if people give it to me, I should be happy. If they don't give it to me, I should also be okay with that. Or that I take it from them. Either I become a beggar or I force myself on them. These are the two actions. Which one is better for me, it is not clear to me. Krishna, I am not a fool. Now you understand what I am going through. It is not a weakness on my part. It is not an unusual behavior. I have some thoughts that I am not able to resolve. and therefore I need your help. So this is number 6. So here we go to verse number 7. And this is an important verse. So verse number 7 says, Karpanyadoshaha Karpanyadosho apahat svabhavaha Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha Yat shreyah syat nishchitam bruhi Tanme shishyaste sham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So this the way it would be sung in our, if we were to do that, Karpanyadosho apahat svabhavaha Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha Yat shreyasyat nishchitam bruhi tanme Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So he says, number 7 says, I am overcome by a sense of karpanya. This is an important thing that we will spend some time on. What is karpanya? Karpanya doshaha. So I ask you, Prichhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. Dharma sammudha chetaha means one who is thinking is uncertain about what is my dharma, what is not my dharma. What am I supposed to do? Should I fight or not? So dharma sammudha chetaha. So one who is thinking is obstructed by not being able to have a clear vision of what I want to do. Then what is the best thing for is Syat Nishchitam Bruhi Tanme. You please tell me clearly what I should do. In fact, because Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapannam. So you know all the things we studied in verse number 1. This is the important one. That until you go to someone, you will not go to someone unless you have some respect and certain trust in that person. But then you can sit with folded hand. He says, I think you are capable of straightening me out. Can you please tell me what am I supposed to do? Tell me clearly. Now this is the meaning of the verse number 7. So here, Karpanya doshaha. This is an important thing. Kripanasya bhavaha karpanya. Kripanaha means a miser. Now we have talked about this in other classes also, but this is where it really comes to its focus in Bhagavad Gita. He says, my swabhavaha is karpanya doshaha, apahat swabhavaha. I am overcome with a sense of miserliness. And what is the miserliness? So he says, so this is given in the verse number 7 beginning. Avidya krita dehendriyadi anatmanah swarupam idameva ahamiti vyavaharayati vyavaharati iti kripanaha tvagyaha yova etad aksharam gargi aviditva asmat lokat praiti sa kripanaha kripano yoho jitendriyaha iti shruti smriti prasiddhehe tasya bhavaha karpanyam agnyanam tamaha pradhanatvat vasti swarupam dushayatīti tadeva doshaha tena upahatas tirotihi tena upahataha tirohitaha swasya avvikriyasya pratyakatmanaha bhavah satta yasya saha karpanya dosha upahat svabhavah avidya tiraskrat atmasrupa yasmat. Long sentences, but an important one. This is really the crux of the whole thing. So he says, avidya krita dehendriyadi anatmanaha swarupam idameva ahamiti. So here it means where is the miserliness? What do you mean by miserliness? This is such an important thing that it is given in the very beginning of the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. The teaching will start in about 3 verses. But here the admission by Arjuna that really I am also I recognize that somehow I am not able to really to understand this very well, and therefore I have a defect. What is the defect? The defect is this. Due to my inability to see my true nature, I am behaving like a fool. Without tapping into the free and infinite wealth of my beingness, I am just acting as though I am a small person. So he says, avidya krita dehendriyadi anatmanaha swarupam idameva ahamiti. I am only doing this much. It is exactly like a wave of the ocean doesn't understand the enormity of its being. If it puts the I-ness into the water, it is the whole ocean. But because of its inability to understand that, it only takes itself to be a small person. This is the miserliness. It's very much like you have been told, like in this case, supposing you have won the lottery, the lotto, and but you don't tap into it. You still behave like a poor person. This is the kripana swabhava, karpanya dosha. This is a dosha. This is a defect in us. We have to understand that I have a defect in me. If I didn't know about it, then it's a different thing. But if I know what I have, and yet I am not working to invoke its grandeur in myself, and I continue to behave like a small, limited, sukhi-dukhi person, this is what is called karpanya dosha apahat svabhava yasya. And so therefore, I bow to you that please, I am your... so what it really means is that please remove my sense of smallness. Because you yourself have told me that I am beyond the smallness, but I don't understand it. And because of my non-understanding, I continue to behave like a fool. Dharma sammudha cheta. So this is the verse number 7. So now and so this is an interesting thing, that once somebody declares that I am your shishya, I am your student, shiksha yogya, the yogyatam of shiksha is called shishya. Once somebody submits to you and say, please help me, you will be remiss if you don't follow through with it. And I think that happens to all of us, to me also. Once in a while I find a new person who comes and likes what they hear, and they say, I'd like to really enroll in your classes. Please put me on the roster because I like what you are saying. So I get that from time to time. And when that kind of an email happens, then immediately there is a new connection between that person and me. I can see that. Because I see that person has submitted himself or herself to me. And so I have a new appreciation for that person. I don't just look at it as just another email and so on. And there's, for each person that submits it, there are other people who come and go. So I don't have any kind of a connection with them. But for those that have said, I attended your classes, I've attended the class, and I like what you're saying, and may I please, can you put me on the roster? I have a certain love and appreciation for that person because they're expecting me to do that. So similarly here also, so this saying, Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So it is written in the annals of the Gita that Arjuna and Sri Krishna were contemporaries. They used to work with each other and talk to each other, and all of that was going on. But up until this time, Arjuna had not declared his studentship. When that happens, then it is incumbent upon Sri Krishna to make sure that the desire of the student is fulfilled to the best of the ability. And so this is what, this is the connection. So he says, मया ते किं वक्तव्यम भवान पंडितः खलु सूक्ष्म बुद्धिया युक्त्या च यत् श्रेयः साधनं तत्त्वया एव ज्ञातव्यम इति आह नहि इति. So he says that if the teacher says, you look like a very smart person, you can do this yourself, why do you need me? Why do you need me? And he says, no, I need you. So he answers the need by giving verse number 8. Nahi prapashyami mama apanudyat shreyo apanudyat chokam uchoshanam indriyanam avapya bhumau avasapyaviddham rajyam suranamapi cha adipatyam. I am having difficulty in recalling the exact Sanskrit here because in most of our teaching we really start with verse number 11. So these are unusual, number 1 through 10. Anyway, what it means is that, so here, this is the last verse that we will do, and then we will start with number 9 next time, 9 and 10, and then go on. He says that if you think I can figure it out on my own, I can't. I know this already. Because I find that all the people that I see, they are not completely happy. They are not completely happy in the sense that they still have problems in life. This is interesting. The other day, we had a short visit to Napa with my son and his wife and my oldest grandchild. The second one was not there. She's in a camp. So we went out to dinner and we were sitting down. And my older granddaughters are all growing up very fast. The oldest one, Arya, is like 16. And she's really becoming a young lady. She's driving. And by the same token, we don't get a lot of chance to really be with her, to talk to her, and so on. So we had a long table, about 8 or 9, 10 people. And by the time I parked my car and joined the group, Arya was sitting clearly on the other side of the table. So I requested, I said, Arya, I don't get a chance to talk to you. Can you please come and sit down next to me? So I had to convince another member of the family to switch with her. So I can really just sit down and just talk to her during the dinner. It was so pleasant. And we're talking about, she's a good swimmer, and so we're talking about her swimming, what colleges you go to, and so on. And somehow in the conversation, she mentioned to me that one of her swimming friends, her father is worth $7 billion. You just casually mentioned it to me. So I said, really? Who is that? So she gave the name of the person. It's a Russian person, and I don't know exactly how he's made the money. So that was an opening which gave me a chance to discuss about the money and happiness. And I did the best. You cannot overdo it because you just have to be very subtle about it and so on. But you still have to be truthful. So I was talking to Arya and I says, and this is a fact, really speaking. If you look at some of our friends who are, I think I have at least 2 or 3 or 4 people who are over $1 billion each. And my wife's clients, both of her, she has 2 big clients, those are the ones she works for, have more than $2 or $3 billion each. Billion. And at the same time, we are quite acquainted with them in terms of their life, what they are going through, how do they behave, what is their level of happiness, and so on. And so this is what I was trying to summarize for Arya, that really speaking, getting a lot of money and success is a small part of life. It is important. So, most of these people have private planes. They can go anywhere they want to. This weekend Cabo and the next weekend Hawaii and so on. Yes, so I grant you that they have a certain facility for doing that. But in terms of the day-to-day living of emotional issues, COVID, health, not being able to get the doctor in time, problems with many of them are divorced and married with multiple children and so on. So you can imagine all the issues that comes about because of that, and how they are behaving in the midst of all this. The money is a very small part of it. Some of them are very nice and they are well adjusted, some are not. Some of my wife's clients, when somebody comes in to deliver something, they hardly give them any tip. Others are very generous. So the generosity and love and so on may or may not be there. I mean, I wasn't going into this much detail with Arya, but I tried to convey to her. Maybe just plant some seeds in her mind so that as she grows up, she knows how to be happy rather than to be successful. So Arjuna here is saying the same thing. He says, it's not as though I know everything, but I do know this. In my review of people are struggling. They have, this is exactly what he is talking about in verse number 8. Nahi prapashyami mama, I do not see this. That even and he says that it can be seen that even Brahmaji and Vishnu, etc., they're also busy. They have to really a lot of work to do. And that must allow them to be beset with some responsibilities and so on. And so I want to be completely away from it. And this is what I want to find out from you. Is it possible for me to be a human being and to be completely away from any kind of a dukkha? This is what I want from you. And I am not able to, because of my karpanya dosha, because I am so beset with the limitations brought about with my body and my mind and my indriyas and so on, I cannot see the freedom of the Atma. And for that I turn to you. So here it points out that not only does he have some gunas, but also some idea of what he wants. So then we can now conclude this by saying, number 9, Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva hrishikesham gudakeshah parantapa nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha. So Sanjaya, who is relating this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, says, evam uktva. Having said this, he says, tushnim babhuva. He became quiet. In fact, it is said that he laid down his arms. He had all of the kavacham and all the arrows and so on and so forth. He was kind of like a fully armed person. He put it all down on the back of this ratha, the chariot, and sat down and became quiet. He says, I've said everything that I wanted to do, and I'm filled with sorrow. I am not filled with fear. I am filled with uncertainty. I don't know what the next, because it's a major commitment on my part, whether I should go ahead by trying to fight this enormous war, or should I escape it and just become a normal person and just avoid the bloodshed. I am uncertain about which ways to go, and for that I need your advice, and that is all that I have to say. And he became quiet. So, with that, the case for understanding is made. And here I can even just quickly go over verse number 10, so that we are ready to start with the teaching in the next class. So we can even briefly look at number 10. Tam uvacha Hrishikeshaha prahasanniva bharata senayoho ubhayoho madhye vishidantam idam vachaha. I haven't gone through this yesterday, but so I will just. So a couple of things on this verse and then we are done. So he says, to him now, Krishna, who is called Hrishikeshaha. Hrishikeshaha means Rishi ka naam Ishaha. So here means all the sense and the organs of actions. Who is the master of those? So we are really speaking masters of our indriyas and our manaha and our dehaha, but not really. We should be masters, but we abdicate our mastery by letting them do what they want to. So we are potentially Hrishikeshaha, but we are not really Hrishikeshaha. How? Because, for example, your mind tells you, okay, let's do this. And you feel this is not right. I don't think I should do this. Are you able to tell your mind, just be quiet, we're not going to go through this? No. Whatever your mind says, you go along with. Not all the time, but most of the time. This is exactly what happens in raga dvesha, in reactions. So we are not Hrishikanam. Hrishikanam means all the organs of actions and sense organs. We are not the Ishaha. But the one who is really the Ishaha, or who is potentially the Ishaha, which is what I want to become, is the Ishvara. So Hrishikeshaha. And then the last one, and so he says, Senayoho ubhayoho madhye, in the middle of the two armies, he proceeds to teach him. And with what kind of an attitude does he proceed to teach him? Prahasan iva bharata. Prahasan iva means as though he is smiling and laughing. So smiling, and this is an important thing. the attitude of teaching, the attitude of the teacher and so on, is that of one who is not cowed down by the problems of the student. He does not let the problems of the student become heavy in his mind. It's a little bit like, Dayanandji had explained this to me one time, it was very nice. He says, sometimes if the child has some fever, then the nightmares come to the child. This is how it happens. Your mind, your brain is sick. And so all these bad thoughts come for the child. And so the mother is sitting next to the child. The child is asleep and he's babbling, "Oh, the tiger is about to kill me. Save me." And it's babbling. So the mother knows there's no real tiger, not a real problem. But yet it is sympathetic to the child being attacked by a tiger. So it tells the child, it's okay, just wake up. It's just a dream. So similarly here also, the teacher doesn't see a real problem. So Dayanand used to say that it is very interesting. The teacher does not see a problem and the student does not see a solution. And the both of them are trying to communicate with each other. Anyway, that may be an extreme case, but here he says the prahasanna iva means as though he is laughing. He is not really laughing. Iva is important here. Iva means as though he is laughing. If he is really laughing, he is going to insult the Arjuna. Arjuna is saying, "My God, I am in deep sleep, and he's got tears running down." And Krishna starts laughing. You're a fool. No. He'll insult Arjuna. But inside, he appears to be serious. "Okay, I see what you're coming from. Okay, let's work on it." Inside, the teacher is very confident that there is no problem and you just stay with it. You will see a complete conquest of all problems. So he says this is the attitude with which Krishna starts his teaching with the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter, which we will start next week. So with that, I close the class. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Mrityor Asato Ma Sadgamaya. What is it? I can't even forget. Toma Sadgamaya Prasamova Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamidav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Good to see you all. Shanti Kumar, it's a good point. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation on the part of the Ukrainian soldiers. Yeah, the only thing they can do is to defend the interests of the country and to protect the people and so on. So they have to do that. They find themselves in a situation where nothing could be resolved, and even though this is a immoral war on the part of the Russians, and the immorality of the war of the Russians also has roots in it. I think I may have been telling you this, that one time I met a technician at a local doctor's office who was doing he was actually a doctor himself in Russia, Indian person, and I had a long conversation with him. He was saying, when you criticize the Russians for waging this war, you ignore some of the legitimate causes that really precipitated the war, because the Russians had a long list of complaints against the West about how they had taken the Ukrainians were basically Russians in the beginning, but slowly it has been chipped away from their control. And they wanted to avoid the war in the beginning by saying that if you at least agree on some of the terms, one of the terms was that you don't form this NATO against us, because we are the ones who delivered, we helped you defeat the Nazis in the Second World War, and so we are not your natural enemies. So we have a certain lifestyle. We disagree with what your political views are and so on, but you allow us to be where we have a certain control. You didn't do that. You went back on your promise of not letting Ukraine join NATO, and so we have no choice. So there is a certain justification on their part on how it was done. In any case, the soldiers who are fighting it cannot sort it out. It is just too much for them to really take the matters in their own hand. So they have to go through the very difficult part of giving pain to the other people and dying themselves and so on. So that's the way life it is. But hopefully that having done so in the best possible manner, then their life will reward them in some way, either in this life or in next life. They say, in fact it is written in our Shastra, that if you were to lay down your life in the defense of your own country, then at least for a while you will have a very pleasant experience. You will go to a heaven, no doubt about it. The heaven is temporary in our mind. So you will just like, you work very hard and you go to Hawaii. So similarly here also, one of the justifications for entry into the Swargaloka, into the heavenly abode, various forms of it, is how well you defended your country and you lay down your own life in the defense of the country. So all that will happen to you. This is a long process. You cannot just look at it in one life. It has previous and the future, and all of that has to be considered. So something like that. I don't know. I was thinking that now that we don't have a second class on Saturday and we had potentially said 8 to 10, we will start doing meditation more regularly as part of this class also. But another thing that we may consider is that if you had some question which may be unrelated to today's topic, you just had some general doubts about something, then please write to me about it ahead of a class, so before Saturday, so I have a chance to kind of understand what your questions are. And then we can have a more extended dialogue on that one topic. Because, as you know, I don't see a lot of real questions from you as part of this chat window. So our satsangs are somewhat muted and short. But I'm thinking now that we have some time, what we might do is for you to submit some questions ahead of time and for me to focus on it during this time after the class, and then we can go back and forth about it. One of the students had actually sent me a question a couple of days ago, but this was on the Tuesday night class. So on the Tuesday class, after the class, I intend to really focus on the answer to that question. And I was thinking we can do the same thing on Saturdays as well. So anyway, some thoughts about it. All right, if you're okay with that, then we can complete the class, and it will be good to see you. Okay, bye-bye. Hari Om.